Okay. Hi, everyone. We're the Carleton Film Society. And before we introduce ourselves individually, I just want to introduce what we're talking about today. So, we're discussing the film Malcolm and Marie, which came out Feb 5th of this year itself. It's the first film to be shot and filmed and released in the COVID-19 pandemic. And it stars Zendaya and John David Washington, and it was written and directed by Sam Levinson, and it was released on Netflix exclusively. So I'm just going to introduce myself really quickly, and then we'll introduce all of us. So my name is Keya Shirali, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of CFS, and I also do some of the financing. I'm a fourth-year double major with Communication and Media Studies and Film Studies, and I'll just now hand over the mic to the next person.
Okay, I'll go. So my name is Stephanie, and I'm a third year also at Carleton and in film studies and communication studies, and I help out with the Carleton Film Society with whatever I can, and it's really exciting to be talking about Malcolm and Mary today, so I'm excited to see what everyone has to say. So Beatrice, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Beatrice. I'm second year at Carleton in media production and design, and yeah, I'm also really excited to talk about this. Yeah, and Ashley, you want to go introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ashley. I'm also COO. This is my third year at Carleton. I'm actually a criminology major, but I also minor in film studies. So let's dive into it then.
Awesome. So I guess for spoiler-free version, so what the movie is all about is that it's a filmmaker with his girlfriend that's coming back from a big premiere that they just witnessed about the filmmaker's big film. They come back home and there's some friction. There's an obvious friction between the both of them. And basically what happened is that the filmmaker, which is Malcolm, forgot to thank his girlfriend in the premiere speech. And that's just a very embarrassing, bad part of the movie. And then it just starts with this whole fight, basically. So it's a whole lot of shebang, which just starts with a big fight, and there's a lot of love, there's a lot of friction, and we're just going to talk about that all today. The themes, the way it was filmed, the cinematography. I mean, we have a lot to talk about. So if ever you're in the, if you haven't seen the film, I would say go watch it and come back on our Facebook Live to just see it and understand our conversation. I mean, we all have some experience with film studies, so we'll have probably some interesting topics and things to come about. So if you haven't seen it, leave right now. It's the last time. And then you can come back here and listen in. Or if you've already seen it, it's really time to listen in. And if ever you have anything to mention, there's a posting live comments. So we'll see the comments. We'll bring up your whatever you're going to talk about. You can just come into the discussion, and we'll see what we'll go with the conversation. So spoilers, people, you can leave. Or I don't know, the opposite. I guess it's the opposite. Whatever. So okay, what was your first impression of the film?
So I made the mistake of coming across too many reviews. Like, you just gave a spoiler alert to everyone. I mean, to be honest, there isn't much to spoil because there isn't like too much action happening, but there is a lot of like reviews can cause you to have too many like preconceived notions about watching the film. But a few things that I came across was that the film was criticized for the notion that there were several comments made about Black art, Black identity, and the Black experience, but that most people assume that because the film is credited to have been written and directed by Sam Levinson, who is not Black, they might have been out of place or a reflection of Levinson's own personal frustrations regarding the film industry that he's voicing through like a different community, right? And Zendaya, actually, one of the actors in the film, defended this aspect of the film by making a public statement that the film belonged to John David Washington, so one of the other actors, Zendaya herself, and Sam equally, and that all the actors played a role in the film's writing as well. Mm-hmm. So I think there's this whole, it's really divisive. Like, a lot of people are questioning the authenticity of the film's writing, and I think it's natural that the actors would want to defend that. So what do you guys think about this whole like debate?
I mean, I'll jump on just because it's basically what the movie is about. It's what your whole critic basically is what the movie is criticizing, which is really funny. And it's criticizing all the aspects of film studies, in my opinion, whether it is the idea of authorship and whether we should credit all the credits to the director or should we credit as a collaborative effort. And I think the way it's made kind of goes back and forth with the idea of, well, should we credit the filmmakers? Should we credit the whole cast? And it's just a really interesting dynamic. And I think that, in my opinion, crediting the director for saying that he's white and he was not maybe the right person to do this is unjustifiable, because it dismisses all the other people that had to do with this film. And it's not just this filmmaker's singular point of view. It's also, as you said, the actors that had a lot of things to do with the way it was made. And I think that was very interesting. And it goes a lot about a lot of different things about film studies, like the way that we critique things and how it's sometimes nonsensical, but sometimes it is. Like the idea of the gaze came up about how he might have filmed a woman without her shirt on or her breast showing in, I think she was being shot or something like that, and how maybe that would have been, if a woman would have made the movie, if that would have changed. And I mean, I think it's an open debate, and I think that's what the whole movie is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a debate about how we should view films, how films are supposed to be made, and how, or if there is a certain way that films are supposed to be made. I think it's just trying to question all of it. So what do you two think of it?
Yeah, I was thinking the same. Like, yeah, I agree that, films, it's not only the director only. There's a lot of people who go behind every film. But I feel like this film, you can really see through the character of Malcolm, a bits of like Sam Levinson in it. So like I've heard that the whole, monologue of Malcolm being mad about the bad review for LA Times is related to, I guess, Sam Levinson. He received a bad review for, I think it was Assassination Nation. It was one of his old films, and he really just he didn't like any critics. I guess this part of the film was him trying to also blow some steam off and try to have this rant through the character of Malcolm. So I think it's in a way, like, you can say that, with Malcolm's rant, not everything has to be political and about race, but the director really also has some say in the film and what goes into film. So you can kind of see like both, it's like Sam Levinson's influence on it, but also maybe not everything has to be directed to the director, and like everything can be a part of what the movie plotline is and doesn't have to be related to the director's personal life. So there can be both ways going there.
Yeah, I viewed it the exact same way. I really felt like he was hiding behind Malcolm's character, but it was weird because like it comes across almost as if he's like using the real struggles of like Black independent filmmakers to avoid his own criticism for this movie. Do you get what I'm saying? That when that comes across, it felt like, oh, you can't criticize me because I'm using this and this and this. So that's how I felt.
Some people call it like dialogue blackface, even. So
yeah, I saw that too.
There was some parts of it was like a bit uncomfortable, where it's like knowing that the director is white and how he uses Malcolm in that way. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but I see your point of like maybe it doesn't have to be always directed, like related.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's also the critique that he's making when he's getting that LA review about why does it always have to be political? Like whenever a Black man makes a movie about a Black woman having trouble with addiction, like why does it always have to be political about race, basically? Is it because he's Black, or is it because it's a movie about race? And he kind of says it's not a movie about race. It's a movie about addiction. And why do we always have to put it on my color and my personality and who I'm portraying? Like, why can't we just put the film with what's the content of the film, or let's put the politics of the film aside and look at just the content and the emotion and in some ways or form the authenticity of it all, instead of thinking about all the other political things. And I think it's kind of the critique that Sam is trying to bring up here, that, I mean, whether it is why does a woman filmmaker need to be excluded or put aside or put to differences than a men filmmaker? Why can't we just be all filmmakers all together and just create and enjoy all of this medium together. So I think it's an interesting point. I just don't know how to justify it, especially in this world and in this time when there's just so much debate on all of this. But I think that's kind of the opinion that he was trying to bring up.
Should we go into just Malcolm and Marie, just because this whole film is their like relationship? So, yeah, what did you guys think about their relationship to begin with?
Toxic. I feel like everyone can agree with that. Very loud. Oh, yeah. And even for like the first like how many minutes, like Marie barely speaks a word, right? She's just being shouted at.
Yeah. But I was siding with Marie the whole time. She had the strongest arguments, in my view. So,
in my view, there was arguments on both sides, and it was just a mix between who do I think is more right, and it was more of like a going back and forth between whose side am I taking, which was kind of like how I felt during the whole movie. I felt like, you know, like a couples therapist, like that's just in between two people, and that's just like, I agree with you, but I also agree with you. But you just gotta communicate. I think that's the main issue between this relationship, that there's issues with communication. There's issues in the way that he speaks his mind to her that is just very problematic. And when he talks about, for example, suicide to her, and how he kind of blames her for wanting to kill herself. I mean, I just thought that was very just very wrong and just like way too far. I mean, not necessarily the movie went too far, it's just that the argument was just too far. And it was just disappointing that like someone could say this, but I'm sure that in reality, there's a bunch of couples that go through these similar kinds of arguments where people blame mental illness on the person. And I just think that that's just wrong in a context of a relationship. And it just amplifies how she feels, unfortunately. But and the other way, she also manipulates him in different ways as well. And so it's just a going back and forth between like, how do you want to, like, no one is right, no one is wrong, which is why I think this movie is like really gray. And it's like, it's in a really gray area of like who you think is right, who you think is wrong, the good, the bad. And I was watching this with my boyfriend actually when we were watching it, and he brought up, I mean, I think the movie's in black and white because there's like good and there's bad, and like it's being represented through the way that the film is being like made and the way that the characters are. There's good arguments on both sides and there's bad arguments on both sides, but they're not getting into this gray area very much. And I think that's why it was represented this way. And yeah, I think we'll go a little bit more into that. So what do you guys think?
Was there any pun intended with the whole like gray area thing? Because like the color scheme, I just thought like there was a double meaning with that. But
I mean, I think that's the whole point. There is a whole double meaning with it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't even like think about, you know, like how black and white would really play into the relationship. But I think like, now that you brought it up, it's like, okay, I can relate that to the storyline, their relationship. But, you know, I've heard like other people say like, oh, maybe he's just trying too hard, trying to make it like artsy, or maybe it was just a hard house to film in color grade. So like black and white probably helped him out in that area. Or even like relating it to the jazz music, they were just saying maybe he's trying to be more artsy than this film was really about. Because it was just these like two couples. And yeah, like back to the toxic like couples, you know, I was just thinking like, you know, how couples, some people will view like a relationship of going into a relationship that maybe you have to be your best selves and maybe you have to like love yourself so much that if you're going into a relationship, you need to find someone who is able to show you that love more than you can like love yourself. And we would see this like relationship as toxic, but like a different view to it is that maybe some people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to love themselves. And so that when they find someone who is able to show interest and show them how to love themselves, they will take anything that they can. And so I was just thinking, you know, Malcolm and Marie both are complicated characters. They have a really long history, like with Marie being a recovering addict, and Malcolm was there for her as she was in rehab, as in group therapy. And even Malcolm and his relationship in his past of like dating all these people who are also broken. Even one of his ex-girlfriends was suicidal, and there was just a lot going there. And his egotistic, workaholic manner, he I think both of them complement each other in that way, where Marie grounds him a little bit to, as he's celebrating, she's like, okay, calm down. The reviews aren't out yet. Just like take it down a bit. And Malcolm is just there as like support throughout everything that she's been through. So in a way that's a little bit beautiful and toxic at the same time, but I think that's where their passion comes from in their relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like no, like, I don't know, the end is kind of making me think like, so are they together? Are they not together?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like, I don't know, it's a dead end, right? The movie's a dead end. It's kind of how life goes. And I think that's his, like Sam's way of representing authenticity throughout the film, where it's more like it's like it's life, right? There's no ending, or there's in the story, right? Like in film, there's always a happy ending or a sad ending. There's always an ending, right? But in this film, it's kind of just like, okay, it's done. It's done. But there was no complete, like, is there an end or end to the relationship? Is there not an end to it? So I thought that was kind of interesting, because he kind of just shows that, I mean, it doesn't really matter. That was just like a fraction or a part of what was happening in their time, and it's up to you to kind of think like, do you think they'll be together or not? But I mean, I think that was interesting, the way that was made.
I actually have a question for you guys that's like kind of related, but so we obviously got into the discussion of the relationship between Malcolm and Marie, right? And then in the previous question, we were talking a lot about the role of the director and how it's like not the only thing in the making of a film. But I was thinking, so Sam Levinson, the director of this film, he also made the show Euphoria, which also stars Zendaya. And her character in the show, Rue Bennett, she plays a young girl who's going through drug addiction and recovery. And in this film, Marie herself is said to have gone through that at the age of 20, which is something that's alluded to as one of the inspirations for the character of Imani in Malcolm's script. So in real life, actually, Zendaya mentioned that her middle name is also Marie, but like it's spelled as Maree. And when she was talking about the film in her Instagram post, she called herself like the other name, so like Maree, instead of the one that's being used for the film. So what do you make of all these? Like, I know like Malcolm and Marie, the characters, are supposed to have a relationship, and then there's like the relationship of the director with the actors. But what if all this, like all these themes and elements interconnecting? What do you make of that? Like, did it resonate with you too, or am I just drawing connections that don't exist?
At least for me, I mean, I think this topic in general is something that obviously touches him or them both in some way or form. Like, and I think that's another one of the arguments in the film. It's like the film doesn't need to be authentic; it needs to be electric or emotion, or have some emotion. And I don't know if I'm quoting that right, but I feel like that's kind of what he's. It's another way of just showing. I mean, it's obviously something that means a lot to them. I don't know if I'm interpreting your question right, but I think that's maybe why it's interconnected.
Yeah,
it goes back to like the idea of like authorship, and how maybe like a director is like, and their work is very related to each other. So I feel like it could be influenced by his other work, since I guess we're just all influenced by everything, and it's somehow like unconsciously might have just came in here, but maybe that's his intention as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Ashley, did you have something to say?
Don't know. I agree with everything you guys have said, like the authorship of Sam Levinson. If he's intending for all of this to be coming across as such, like, are the parallels we're connecting, were they meant to be parallels, or were they just accidents because he's been influenced by everything in his life, like Malcolm in this story? Or are we just insane and drawing connections out of nothing? You know?
It could be maybe like a little Easter egg, like, hey, also Euphoria, which I haven't watched yet, which I really want to get
I mean, either. I really want to see it, but
all good reviews, but
I've heard good things. But I think there's probably a connection maybe to it, but who knows? I mean, we don't really know. But another thing that's brought up in the film is meaning. And does a film need to have meaning? or does it just need to make you feel something or be entertaining? I mean, I think that's something that was kind of interesting. So maybe it doesn't have any meaning after all, or maybe it does, but maybe not unintentional meaning, but who knows? I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
For the film in general, yeah, I felt like at the end of the film, I've watched it like twice, and I still don't really know like what I want to take away from it. I think just the big message for me is like, yeah, maybe communication is the best solution to every issue. Just say what you're feeling and don't let it build up until you have this huge argument that like lasts for hours. But this entire film, I think it was just to have like fun and like see who can break the other one first. I think that was like my takeaway from it. I didn't really have like a big like, oh, this is the meaning of this entire film. Maybe it's like a life changing, but I don't know what you guys thought about the end of the film.
The end, or like
just like what you felt about the
meaning
thing, and then the end.
There's one thing I can think of. So they keep having this, they go on and on about like the meaning of authenticity and what it means in storytelling and in life, and they both have very polarizing opinions about it. But I think it's all talk and talk and talk until Marie, she does that whole act with the knife, right? Where she's like pretending about to self-harm, and she's so convincing that Malcolm thinks she's actually going to do it, even though he's a director. And most people, he isn't able to pick up on the fact that she's acting and she's not really doing it. And then she drops the knife and she's like, and then I don't know the exact dialogue, but she's like, and that's authenticity or something like that. She alludes to authenticity. And I think that just shows that, you know, you can go on and talk about meaning and authenticity and what it means to be like what life is and all the philosophy of it. But, you know, like real life action is different. A person going through the throes of self-harm and depression and drug addiction is wildly different from a person talking about it. Like a person just analyzing it and just theorizing about it doesn't even have a semblance of understanding for what that person goes through. And I think maybe I'm just overanalyzing this, but I think that's the whole point. Like, I don't think you could find the meaning of anything just by talking about it. And I think she demonstrated that in the scene. So.
That's true. I don't know. I felt like the film for me really made me reflect a lot about criticizing movies in general and how we should criticize them and if we should criticize them in general. And it's a work of art in general. Like how can we justify authorship and all those things, and how can we esteem Citizen Kane to be as good as, I don't know, this movie? Like, how can we esteem these kinds of movies? And I mean, has the greatest movie of all time ever been made? Who knows? But it's like, how do we criticize these films, and like what makes a good film a good film? It's always changing. It's always a different dynamic, and it made me really think about all of that. And as someone that wants to become a filmmaker myself in the future, it just made me think a lot about all of that in weird ways. But it also made me reflect on my own relationships that I've had and how relatable it is to sometimes want to bring someone else down so low that, you know, you want to bring yourself up in some way. But like when you see it in your face like this, when you're watching it from an outside view, it makes you kind of realize how you've been wrong in maybe treating someone that way, or if you've treated even your own self in that way. I found that was very reflecting and very authentic in some strange way. Of course, I've never lived a relationship to that extent of toxicity, but still, I mean, I understand what's going through their minds and how they're fighting, and how sometimes you don't want to forgive the other person, but you still love them, but you still pretend like you're not forgiving them. Like, it's just really relatable and all of that, and how you're still making mac and cheese even for them, even though you're really mad at them. So I don't know, it was very relatable in that sense, and I don't know, made me feel good about my relationship, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like in all films, it's just like, it's all like to the viewer's like experience, and that's how they like view it. Everybody will see a movie differently. It's going to be a different movie for everyone who sees it, and that's when you go like reviews and criticism. It's not all going to be like the same. We're all seeing it differently. And like a comment to like the mac and cheese one. Apparently, John David Washington like threw up after having to film that so many times. He wasn't supposed to he didn't have to eat it, but he was just it was all part of the character. So he just kept on going.
That's funny.
Dedicated.
I think this movie kind of made me want to stick away from criticism, from critiques and reviews, because it makes me want to just think of the movie for my own self and not have that outside point of view of whoa, what is the political stuff saying about it? I find it, when I watched the film, I didn't know who the director was. I didn't know that he was white. So I watched the film in another perspective. And it made me not think about those political things. And I don't know, I still felt the authenticity of a human speaking these things. But maybe that's just how I saw it in my point of view. But I just thought that, I don't know, I made me think less to look at the side of things and more to think about how do I see it and how did I gather meaning from it.
I feel like these days we're just bombarded with reviews, even if they're pretty much spoilers. You don't want to look at them because you don't want to color your opinion about it before watching it. But everything from tweets to memes to actual reviews in magazines and newspapers, it's just everywhere. So it's hard to filter through that, even if you intend to. So.
Mm-hmm.
I think also just because some of us are major and minors in the film studies, we're trained to think about all these elements to form our own when writing these essays and everything. So I think that also has to play a role in we have to study everything, and does this have a meaning or connection to it? So it definitely has a tie with that as well.
Yeah,
for sure. And another thing that I wanted to bring up was the aspect of reflexivity. So I think that the black and white was very intentional. Because there's certain ways that things are made. For example, there's a one point where it kind of goes overexposed or something like that. If the mirror flipped or something like that, and it's just a shot of the bed when she says her speech about being thanked and what she would have liked him to say about. And then she just kind of leaves the room, and then we have a long shot just of the bed, and then it just goes overexposed for 3 seconds or something like that, and it's just I don't know. I'm just thinking I don't really know what it means. I don't really know what it's all saying, but I in some way or form, I think it's trying to say the idea of reflexivity of the filmmaker or the director, whoever, the collaborative effort of whatever we're saying is trying to say that this is a movie, and that we need to keep that in mind, that we're still consuming something that was created by someone, and that we have to just be aware of that, and that it's how do I even want to explain this? It's why do I think it goes again, why do we always have to criticize something that was just created? Or I don't know if I'm going on the right lines of this, but I don't know, it kind of made me think of that in some way, that it's it reminds us that it's being a film, right? And that we shouldn't take it so seriously. Yeah.
And even the worst films that you can think of, a film just takes a lot of time and effort and the whole production of it. So there's a lot of work that goes into even one of the bad films that you've seen.
Yeah. We've seen a lot.
Yeah, the film was made in lockdown times, COVID times. I think it did a great job. Especially even though you have only the two main characters and you have this one location in this house, they did a good job with a small crew, and they worked around this the space that they had. Even with their cinematography, I was noticing the second time around how the camera was moving as the characters, and how the blocking was changing from Malcolm and Marie as they're walking across. We're going to see Marie now, or they're Malcolm. So I liked how they were able to flip between this side's talking now and this one's talking, and they were still able to move around the house, which was really impressive. So
it was. I 100% agree with that, especially with the acting. Needs an Oscar for both of these people. They were incredible, and I think the work of art of this film really reflects the work of the actors and the monologues that they were able to accomplish in long one-shot scenes, might I add. So they were just one still shot, sometimes moving, of just them talking for 10 minutes on the same thing and on the same rant. And it was just really impressive to me that I don't know, and the way that the camera moves, and it's kind of speaking in some way. It's kind of I was saying, the therapist in between is kind of it has a voice of its own, but I don't really understand what the voice is just yet. But I think it's interesting. It's another perspective, an outside perspective of what's happening as well. So it's interesting. I really enjoyed it. Overall, I enjoyed it, even if it was like a lot of yelling and a lot of just depressingness, if that's a word. But yeah. Ashley, did you have anything else to add?
I was just wondering if, like, you guys think this movie could have been made without the pandemic. Do you think, like, a big Netflix company would have invested in something like this if there was no pandemic?
I think just for me, like what attracted me was obviously like Zendaya and John David Washington. Those are two big names. So I feel like with that big of a star, like you can make these films would be like possible still, but maybe not so attractive as it is because you can have like the possibilities of anything without the limitations of the pandemic. So
I mean, also there is an industry for independent films, and this is considered to be an independent film. The way it's made and the way it's trying to differentiate itself from like Hollywood films. And I mean, I think there's a market for it for certain kinds of people, and that I think people just want to watch these kinds of movies too. So I think that's maybe why Netflix would want to invest in that, just like a lot of different big companies have done in the past in making the B studios just to make independent films, and so that they all keep the money in the same place, but they just try to make their films more artsy or more different or just smaller budgets in some way or form, but to just bring the money all in at the same place either way, because horizontal integration, we get it. We learned this.
All right, so do we have any like final thoughts about this, or we wrap it up? 30 minutes?
Yeah, we're at the 30 minutes.
Got it right on the mark.
You really went
like a minute. Extra.
Yeah, we're pretty good. We also got a comment in saying that someone resonated with connecting it to Euphoria. So I think that's really good. So you're not the only one, Keya, that thought of that about this. And
thank God, commenter, thank you for saying that.
No, you're not the only one. It's cool. But you're probably right. I mean, it's a similar topic, same actress, so there must be a connection there for sure.
Has anybody seen it, or just Keya?
I want to.
Have not. HBO is going to take my money, you know.
Honestly, I would recommend it. Like, just use the trial period and just binge it, because it's
Might have to do that.
I still haven't canceled it because of Game of Thrones, and I've ever since Game of Thrones ended, I just never canceled it. But whatever, whatever. I'll watch Euphoria. I thought it looked interesting, so I'll use my membership wisely.
I think I've only just seen her in the Spider-Man one, and John David Washington was in like Tenet and Black Klansman. So
I love Tenet. I don't know why people or critics had not liked it as much as other Christopher Nolan films, but damn, I loved it. I really, really liked it. And she played in The Greatest Showman too, for Zendaya.
Oh, yeah. Haven't seen it either though.
Ah, you got to see it. It's a fun, joyful movie to watch.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people that played in it, actually. I have some friends that played in the movie, which is cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Wow.
So I actually interviewed one on one of my shows. So.
Oh, I think I remember that. I think you had that in I'm gonna check that out again.
It's really cool. Really cool. So I know someone that knows Zendaya, which is cool. That's cool. That's cool. Awesome. Well, I guess we'll wrap this up. So thank you everyone for watching. I don't know if does anyone else have something else to say?
Oh, we're good. We hope that if everyone goes and watches the film, and then if they come back to the live, if they have anything else to add, just you can message our page on Facebook, or you can message us on Instagram, and we can share your views with everyone. And
Awesome. Well, bye. Thank you, everyone.
Great talk. Okay. Bye, guys.